Hey, hello, hello, hello. How is everyone doing? I'm just swinging in to say hello. I did want to just, let's see, move it. Move it. There was one little thing I wanted to play because I don't know if anybody has been able to check this out, but I noticed that Debbie made that video pertaining to Detroit Deadpool. We all know he's a nice, friendly guy. Saying that it was, Detroit Deadpool is an old mod of mine. Now, anybody who went and listened to okay, hi Cassidy. Oh yeah, happy Mother's Day. Happy Mother's Day. Forgot I talked to my daughters. That's my couch, not me. Okay. Now, I do know that some of the people may not know the significance of finding out whom this person is. It's because they are a person who likes to harass people, apparently. And so that's why, just in case anybody, even if the video from Connie Miller's interview with Detroit Deadpool gets removed, even if it does, Debbie still has hers up playing the clip of the voice. But so I just want to play a clip of the voice. Hello. For you guys.
Hey,
Hi, Bobby
Ramos.
Ramos.
That 20 million. That's not that she is, but her family. She was from Australia.
I think if there's a homicide or a shooting that's found to be unjustified and somebody loses their life or a loved one, yeah, the family should be compensated. But that should only be done after the fact, not before the fact. You know what I mean? Like, if they're found guilty and yeah, it's unjustified or whatever, then yeah, man, people need to pay. And if it's through the city or whatever, yeah, they're responsible for it. Pay. You know.
Yeah, but what that tells
But-
me is like that was probably
but what you
already
have right
foreseen
now-
that he was going to be guilty.
Yeah, but what you would have right now without qualified immunity, okay, was be say I'm a policeman, right? And I'm out on patrol, and a guy comes at me, man, to my patrol car with his fucking gun out. I'm gonna kill you, motherfucker, and start shooting, and I shoot back and I kill him. Okay, I'm totally justified, right? I've killed him. I've defended myself. He's already been shooting at me. I've been in my police cruiser. It's a total justified shooting, no charges, blah, blah, blah. That family can still sue the city because I shot him 5 times instead of once. Or
Okay. So there's a clip of Detroit Deadpool not on a voice recorder. So in case anybody wants to check out and compare the voices between Detroit Deadpool and his interview on Connie Miller's, or look at Debbie's video that she made where she's showing a clip of his voice, you can compare and know that that is my old mod. That's, hi, happy Mother's Day, Bobby. That's who Detroit Deadpool is. Okay. Vlad, Rob, Sergeant Shill, Muscovy Militia. Can't think of what other names he might have been under, but that is who Detroit Deadpool is. Yeah, that is who Detroit Deadpool is. Hi, Mr. Tim. Thank you.
or some crazy shit.
Right, and that's because there's qualified immunity on the criminal part of it, but
No,
not
the
civil.
qualified. No, there's no immunity on criminal. There's only immunity on civil. That's where you're making your mistake. It doesn't.
I know, but what I'm saying is on the civil part, I'm saying about suing. Like they can't. Basically, you have to.
Well, because in.
Hello.
Well, I live in
Los Angeles.
I love it when you guys are here. I always check because I want to make sure that you get, Let's see, I want to read the.
Yeah. What's going on here? Detroit Deadpool. Well, basically, he's been harassing people in the community.
Deadpool, not Maryland Deadpool. So yeah, in short, the states, Michigan.
Do you live in Canada or America? Or where's your group from, Canada or America?
The name says Detroit Deadpool, not Canada Deadpool, not.
Well, I live in
Los Angeles Deadpool.
Can you guys hear the voice?
Not Maryland Deadpool. So yeah, in short, the states, Michigan.
But he doesn't live in Michigan. He lives in Florida. This is the guy who's been harassing Maddie, Sharon. Hi, Tanger. Detroit Deadpool is my old mod, Vlad. In case anybody has any doubts about it, just listen to the voice.
Dawn F really appreciates all that you do. Have yeah, that's what I thought of Canada. I didn't know if it was just my Aussies, but even though I am pretty good at understanding American accents.
That it's not something new, it's something that's been going on for a while. And these people are just blind. I don't know if it's ignorance, misplaced good intention, but they don't see that they're causing more harm than help.
I'm kind of surprised that Connie M had somebody on there that was talking so derogatory about people with addiction and stuff. Just really seemed kind of strange to me that he would be so derogatory. Now that's Detroit Deadpool talking there. And this is my old mod talking.
Because in my example that I gave you, that my shooting is justified, right? No, they can't sue me. They can't sue the city. They can't sue nobody because it was justified. Okay. Now, say they found that my shooting wasn't justified. Okay. And now I'm facing criminal charges and I'm found guilty or not, but they found that the shooting was unjustified. Now that leaves them open to lawsuits. And qualified immunity doesn't apply.
That's the same person. Yeah, that is creepy that they've been going after Maddie so much and stuff. Like, that's just so weird. I wonder why. I wonder what is their motivation to try to harass people who were donating to Maddie and stuff like that. I wonder who, like a shill, does things. They're doing things with bad intentions under the guise of good intentions because they're being actually paid for it. And I wonder who put him up to that. That's a very strange thing to do, to come into this community and want to cause chaos and discourse and you know, amongst the community. I'm just saying, now we know why Detroit Deadpool hates me so much. Now we know. Now we know. So how is everybody? Did anything exciting go on today or what? Oh, and I actually like this video. I think it's a good one.
But what would you take her to see?
I don't know her personality.
The big one.
I'm
You don't have
thinking
a
maybe
personality.
rally.
It doesn't sound like a different person. Not at all.
Go watching a rally or something.
Amphitheater.
Yeah, something something active, like
Sydney.
camping or go,
Oh,
whatever.
Camping.
Yeah.
Sure, in
Camping
the
in the
outback.
outback.
Yeah,
That
that
sounds
doesn't
nice.
train. You fly in, you land on the beach, and then it's like a resort.
Why? Who's hating on me
So
today,
pick your date. Pick your
Mr.
date.
Chan?
And
Oh, come on, Tucker. Every time. Every time. Who's hating on me today, huh? That's fucked up. Really? Oh, and Sharon, the bank card, debit card thing was a parody. Just like you saying that I have sex with my dog. It's a parody. It's funny. It's comedy. Isn't it comedy to spread lies and rumors and gossip about people? Isn't it? Thought it was comedy myself. Happy Mother's Day, Kendra. Is Traveler Girl Angie still going on about me? I mean, I don't even get it. Why would she still be going on about me? What is wrong with that girl? Does she understand I don't even fucking know her? I hope she's not still going on about me. I mean, my God. That's strange. No. It's Rob. It's bad. That's who that is. For all I know, he might have been out to get me right from the get-go. Who knows? Fucking weird. Weird. BP, you try looking out for Vern. Not many do that. They would rather troll him. I don't see BP in Travel Girl Angie's. That's weird. And yet she doesn't come here. That's strange. That's certainly BP. That's strange. I haven't seen BP in rooms in ages. That's very strange. Yeah, I keep talking to her there. BP, Lou is going to read cards. That's, oh, no, there she is. Dang, why are people so mean? Wow, that's so weird. That's so weird. I thought she refused to go on anybody's live streams anymore. Wow, that's fucking weird. Fucking weird, man. It's strange, man. It's some strange shit. Eventually, I'm gonna read the rest of that. 5 people you meet in heaven. Oh, here they don't.
So
No. It's just, getting a little ridiculous that Sharon's behavior is, I believe it is out of control myself, but I think it's, I guess she's made some kind of video about Maddie's kids and stuff. I said that you love Bobby Ramos. I don't know if it was, and said that it was JWJ, and said that you love Bobby Ramos. Well, I do love Bobby Ramos. I do love Bobby Ramos. Well, not Bobby Ramos, like, your husband. Oh, that she loved Bobby Ramos. Well, that could be. That could be the truth. Once again, bring him on. Saying despicable lies. This is slander. No, it's parody. Spilling the tea with Sharon V. It's parody. It's funny. I didn't accuse you of that. I repeat, you don't have cancer. You are cancer. Oh, that's lie. That's slander. I mean, that's a lie. It's fine. JDS says she has officially lost her GD mind, and if I hear wow, 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 mimicking Tom Reed, one more time, I'm gonna lose it. Excuse me? I don't say wow, 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 and fucking mimic Tom Reed. I cannot believe she is actually bullying you. As she says, everyone is canceling bullying her. What the F? That is SG. Yeah, okay. Exactly. Melissa says, you got a lot of subject material to work for with another SG parody. Twerking for love, I'm surprised at you. What did we do to you here? We've always been nice to you. I don't see Sharon doing good, so I'm not jealous of her. She's not amazing. Everything about Survivor Girl is preposterous. A normal, sane person would not do 10-hour lives ranting and raving rotten ridiculousness. Shut up, you annoyed. Hug Million. Hog Million is annoyed. A freaky little annoyed boy. Freaky little boy. Sharon is succeeding. Survivor Girl and the haters are receding. Yeah, she wasn't trying to make me look bad twerking, fucking with all her fucking lies and bullshit. Give it a rest. Twerking, we liked you. What's up with you? Thought you were normal. You know? BP, I'm so shocked that you didn't want to be seen at my channel, but you don't mind being seen everywhere else. That's so crazy. Insulting, but it's fine. That's fine. What the fuck? I could finish the 5 people you meet in heaven if you guys want me to. I mean, that's up to you guys. So, no, that ain't it. Unless I'm reading a condensed version. Maybe. It could be. I could be. I could be reading a condensed version, maybe. I wonder if I am. Hmm. Hi, Nacho Baby Doll. Happy Mother's Day. See, this one says 114 pages. I must have been fucking reading the wrong fucking book. Or something. That's forward. I think I was reading a different version of it. I don't know. I know. Sharon's gross. I'm sorry. She just is. She's gross. She's gross. She's gross. Gross person. A very gross person. I really wish that Lady Lipstick would come back too, because I like librarians, and she said she enjoyed the readings too. And I don't know. Do you guys mind? I found it. Where were we at? Do you guys remember? Does anybody remember? I don't know if I can get it bigger though. Oh yeah, like that. No, not that. No. All right, yeah. She can never be fucking nice. She's an ignorant person. Yeah, I'm sure they didn't have visiting on Mother's Day at the nursing home. Sure they didn't. Sure they didn't. She said they didn't have. Ah! You just fucking cleaned all that and you just fucking did that. Are you fucking kidding me? Fucking kidding me? God. Just sat here cleaning this. Fucking cat. Fucking cat, man. Never fucking fails. Just doesn't fail. Never fails. Never fucking fails. Never fucking fails. Can't get a fucking break here. Can't get a fucking break. Fucking break. Can't fucking deal with it anymore. I just can't. It's too much. And they don't really do much anyway. Except annoy the fuck out of me. Does anybody want these fucking cats? Because I'm getting rid of them. I thought she was from fucking Angie's. So fucking annoying, man. Sitting there fucking cleaning something. Fucking cat comes along. Fucking knocks it all over the place. Hi, Indica. Does everybody remember anything about the 5 people you meet in heaven? Anyone at all? Anyone at all? If you do, let me know. If you don't, let me know. Okay. It's not like I'm giving a quiz or anything. I'm just wondering. Happy Mother's Day. It's up to you guys. Or we could find a different one. Yeah, I know. Yeah, it's close to visitors. Sure it is. Sure it is. On Mother's Day. Nursing. Because old people get so many thrills every year. Why would the nursing home not deny them of their family visiting them on Mother's Day? I mean, that's only obvious, right? He had just died. Do you guys remember that part? That something, the drop or whatever it was, that ride. And then the little girl was there and he had pushed her out of the way. If you guys don't, I don't have to do this. I don't have to read it. I could read something else. Yeah, right? Uh, I mean, is there a book anybody would... All right. He had just died, remember? And then he came across the man that was blue in the freak show. Not the freak show, the sideshow, I should say. It was his birthday. His name was Eddie. He worked on Ruby Pier. Hi, Krista. We were just trying to figure where I was at in the book, The Five People You Meet in Heaven. I don't know if you... I'm reading a condensed version. It's only 52 pages, the one I'm reading. Happy Mother's Day, Crystal. There are 5 people you meet in heaven, the blue man said suddenly. Each of us was in your life for a reason. You may not have known the reason at the time, and that is what heaven is for understanding your life on earth. Eddie looked confused. People think of heaven as a paradise garden, a place where they can float on clouds and laze in rivers and mountains, but scenery without solace is meaningless. This is the greatest gift God can give you, to understand what happened in your life, to have it explained. It is the peace you have been searching for. Eddie coughed, trying to bring up his voice. He was tired of being silent. I am your first person, Edward. When I died, my life was illuminated by 5 others. Then I came here to wait for you, to stand in your line to tell you my story, which becomes part of yours. There will be others for you, too. Some you knew, maybe some you didn't, but they all crossed your path before they died, and they altered it forever. Eddie pushed the sound up from his chest as hard as he could. What? He finally croaked. His voice seemed to be breaking through a shell, like a baby chick. What killed? The blue man waited patiently. What killed you? The blue man looked a bit surprised. He smiled at Eddie. You did, he said. Today is Eddie's birthday. He is 7 years old, and his gift is a new baseball. He squeezes it in each hand, feeling a surge of power that runs up his arms. He imagines he is one of his heroes on the Cracker Jack collector cards, maybe the great pitcher Walter Johnson. Here, toss it, his brother Joe says. They are running along the midway, past the game booth, where if you knock over 3 green bottles, you win a coconut and a straw. Come on, Eddie, Joe says. Share. Eddie stops and imagines himself in a stadium. He throws the ball. His brother pulls in his elbows and ducks. Too hard, Joe yells. My ball, Eddie screams. Oh, hold on a minute. He goes, my ball, Eddie screams. Dang you, Joe. Eddie watches it thump down the boardwalk and bang off a post into a small clearing behind the sideshow tents. He runs after it. Joe follows. They drop to the ground. You see it? Eddie says. Mm-mm. A whumping noise interrupts them. A tent flaps open. Eddie and Joe look up. There is a grossly obese woman and a shirtless man with reddish hair covering his entire body. Freaks from the freak show. The children freeze. What are you wiseacres doing back here? The hairy man says. Looking for trouble? Joe's lips trembles. He starts to cry. He jumps up and runs away, his arms pumping wildly. Eddie rises too, then sees his ball against a sawhorse. He eyes the shirtless man and moves slowly towards it. This is mine, he mumbles. He scoops up the ball and runs after his brother. Beef jerky cheese. Sounds great. Not your baby now. Listen, mister, Eddie rasped. I never killed you, okay? I don't even know you. The blue man sat on a bench. He smiled as if trying to put a guest at ease. Eddie remained standing, a defensive posture. Let me begin with my real name, the blue man said. I was christened Joseph Korwalewczyk, the son of a tailor in a small Polish village. We came to America in 1894. I was only a boy. My mother held me over the railing of the ship, and this became my earliest childhood memory, my mother swinging me in the breezes of a new world. Like most immigrants, we had no money. We slept on a mattress in my uncle's kitchen. My father was forced to take a job in a sweatshop, sewing buttons on coats. When I was 10, he took me from school, and I joined him. Eddie watched the blue man's pitted face, his thin lips, his sagging chest. Why is he telling me this? Eddie thought. I was a nervous child by nature, and the noise in the shop only made things worse. I was too young to be there amongst all those men, swearing and complaining. Whenever the foreman came near me, my father told me, look down, don't make him notice you. Once, however, I stumbled and dropped a sack of buttons, which spilled over the floor. The foreman screamed that I was worthless, a worthless child, that I must go. I can still see that moment, my father pleading with him like a street beggar, the foreman sneering, wiping his nose with the back of his hand. I felt my stomach twist in pain. Then I felt something wet on my leg. I looked down. The foreman pointed at my soiled pants and laughed, and the other workers laughed too. Hi, Stephanie Dawson. Happy Mother's Day. After that, my father refused to speak to me. He felt I had shamed him, and I suppose, in his world, I had. But fathers can ruin their sons, and I was, in a fashion, ruined after that. I was a nervous child, and when I grew, I was a nervous young man. Worst of all, at night, I still wet the bed. In the mornings, I would sneak the soiled sheets to the wash basin and soak them. One morning, I looked up to see my father. He saw the dirty sheets, then glared at me with eyes that I will never forget, as if he wished he could snap the cord of life between us. The blue man paused, his skin, which seemed to be soaked in blue fluid, folded in small fatty layers around his belt. Eddie couldn't help staring. I was not always a freak, Edward, but back then medicine was rather primitive. I went to a chemist, seeking something for my nerves. He gave me a bottle of silver nitrate and told me to mix it with water and take it every night. Silver nitrate, it was later considered poison, but it was all I had, and when it failed to work, I could only assume I was not ingesting enough. So I took more. I swallowed 2 gulps and sometimes 3 with no water. Soon people were looking at me strangely. My skin was turning the color of ash. I was ashamed and agitated. I swallowed even more silver nitrate until my skin went from gray to blue, a side effect of the poison. The blue man paused, his face dropped. The factory dismissed me. The foreman said I scared the other workers. Without work, how would I eat? Where would I live? I found a saloon, a dark place where I could hide beneath a hat and a coat. One night, a group of carnival men were in the back. They smoked cigars, they laughed. One of them, a rather small fellow with a wooden leg, kept looking at me. Finally, he approached. By the end of the night, I had agreed to join their carnival, and my life as a commodity had began. Eddie noticed the resigned look on the blue man's face. He had often wondered where the sideshow cast came from. He assumed there was a sad story behind every one of them. The carnival gave me my names, Edward. Sometimes I was the blue man of the North Pole, or the blue man of Algeria, or the blue man of New Zealand. I had never been to any of those places, of course, but it was pleasant to be considered exotic, if only on a painted sign. The show was simple. I would sit on the stage half undressed as people walked past, and the barker told them how pathetic I was. Stephanie, my day was okay. How was yours? For this, I was able to put a few coins in my pocket. The manager once called me the best freak in his stable. And sad as it sounds, I took pride in that. When you are an outcast, even a tossed stone can be cherished. One winter, I came to this pier, Ruby Pier. They were starting a sideshow called the Curious Citizens. I liked the idea of being in one place, escaping the bumpy horse carts of carnival life. Hold on a minute, you guys. Stop this. Please, Tucker, please. Jesus Christ, cat, will you fucking move? Okay. I'm thinking about switching books in the middle. I mean, we can go back to that one, but I was thinking about reading Thinner by Richard Bachman, who is actually Stephen King. It's up to you guys if you want me to, if anybody's ever heard it or not heard it. I mean, but it's up to you guys. It's called Thinner. Has anybody ever heard of it? Thinner? Thinner. Thinner. Has anybody ever heard of it? Well, I'm thinking about trying that book. What do you guys think? What do you guys think? Stephanie says yay. Anybody? All right. Hi, Debbie. Maybe not that one. Happy Mother's Day. Alright. I'm alright. Trying to find something. Yeah. Keep spell that for Bing. I want it to be Google. Come on. Okay. I can't even tell them. Catholics write it. Okay. Yeah, I hear ya. All right. Fuck that. All right. So anyway, how's everybody doing? Debbie, I saw your video. I liked it about Sergeant Show. I don't know if you're still here or not. At the beginning of this, I did play some of a video that I had where I had, Vlad's voice in there. Just in case you didn't know, if you didn't have anything to compare it to. Sergeant Shill there, Rob, whatever, I just don't know what to read. But I don't know. Yeah, it is definitely him. Yeah, definitely. Has anybody ever heard of Jonathan Livingston Seagull? I used to be assigned reading in school quite a bit. I don't know if it still is, but I, for some reason, was never in the class that got assigned. It's actually in the live stream, Debbie, the Q&A with Chosen One Community Men or something like that. And there's like, a couple. It's the Q&A with Chosen One Community Men. But in the beginning of this, I played quite a bit of him, and it's definitely him. Anyway, the book, it's written by Richard Bach, not Richard Bachman, who wrote Thinner, which is Richard Bachman, which is Stephen King's pen name. But Jonathan Livingston Seagull, I I had a friend who was 6'7", 325 pounds. His name was Mountain. And when we would sit and talk about like death and what happens after you die and stuff like that, he would always say, well, I don't think anything happens after you die. He'd say, I think it's ashes to ashes, dust to dust. But I'll tell you what, Tracy, if ever I die, I'll come back and let you know. And then he'd say, you ever read Jonathan Livingston Seagull, Trace? And I'd say, no. And he'd say, you should read it. Hi, Buns. And he'd say, you should read it. And he'd say that always after saying that he thought that you just dry up and become nothing and there's nothing after life, you know? Well, he did die. And he never came back. At least not that I know of. But in a way, I think he kind of did in a different kind of way through this book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I ended up reading the book after he passed away. And I realized that he was my Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And it's by Richard Bach, and it's, inscribed to the real Jonathan Seagull, who lives within us all. I hope you guys enjoy this book as much as I did. Part 1. It was morning, and the new sun sparkled gold across the ripples of a gentle sea. A mile from shore, a fishing boat chummed the water, and the word for breakfast flashed through the air, till a crowd of 1,000 seagulls came to dodge and fight for bits of food. It was another busy day beginning. But way off alone, out by himself, beyond boat and shore, Jonathan Livingston Seagull was practicing. 100 feet in the sky, he lowered his webbed feet, lifted his beak, and strained to hold a painful, hard, twisting curve through his wings. The curve meant that he would fly slowly, and now he slowed until the wind was a whisper in his face, until the ocean stood still beneath him. He narrowed his eyes in fierce concentration, held his breath, forced one single more inch of curve. Then his feathers ruffled, he stalled and fell. Seagulls, as you know, never falter, never stall. To stall in the air is for them disgrace, and it is dishonor. But for Jonathan Livingston Seagull, unashamed, stretching his wings again in that trembling, hard curve, slowing, and stalling once more, he was no ordinary bird. Most gulls don't bother to learn more than the simplest facts of flight, how to get from shore to food and back again. For most gulls, it is not flying that matters, but eating. For this gull, though, it was not eating that mattered, but flight. More than anything else, Jonathan Livingston Seagull loved to fly. Hi, Simca. I just started this book, Jonathan Livingston Seagull. And I just started it now. It's metaphor, it's a metaphorical book, symbolic, symbolic. This kind of thinking, he found, is not the way to make oneself popular with other birds. Even his parents were dismayed, as Jonathan spent whole days alone, making hundreds of low-level glides, experimenting. Like he didn't want to be like every other seagull. He wanted to be better. He wanted to fly better. He wanted to be better. He didn't know why, for instance, but when he flew at altitudes less than half his wingspan above the water, he could stay in the air longer with less effort. His glides ended not with the usual feet-down splash into the sea, but with a long, flat wake as he touched the surface with his feet tightly streamlined against his body. When he began sliding in to feet-up landings on the beach, then pacing the length of his slide in the sand, his parents were very much dismayed indeed. Why, John, why? His mother asked. Why is it so hard for you to be like the rest of the flock, John? Why can't you leave low flying to the pelicans, the albatross? Why don't you eat? Son, you're bone and feathers. I don't mind being bone and feathers, Mom. I just want to know what I can do in the air and what I can't. That's all. I just want to know. See here, Jonathan, said his father, not unkindly. Hi, Mary. Happy Mother's Day, Simca, Mary, all of you. Buns. I just started Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Winter isn't far away. Boats will be few, and the surface fish will be swimming deep. If you must study, then study food and how to get it. This flying business is all very well, but you can't eat a glide, you know. Don't you forget that the reason you fly is to eat. Jonathan nodded obediently. For the next few days, he tried to behave like the other seagulls. He really tried, screeching and fighting with the flock around the piers and fishing boats, diving on scraps of fish and bread, but he couldn't make it work. It's all so pointless, he thought, deliberately dropping a hard-won anchovy to a hungry old seagull chasing him. I could be spending all this time learning to fly. There's so much to learn. You're welcome, Mary. It wasn't long before Jonathan Seagull was off by himself again, far out to sea, hungry, happy, learning. The subject was speed, and in a week's practice he learned more about speed than the fastest seagull alive. From 1,000 feet, flapping his wings as hard as he could, he pushed over into a blazing steep dive toward the waves and learned why seagulls don't make blazing, steep power dives. In just 6 seconds, he was moving 70 miles per hour, the speed at which one's wing goes unstable on the upstroke. Time after time it happened. Careful as he was, working at the very peak of his ability, he lost control at high speed. Climb to 1,000 feet, full power straight ahead first. Then push over, flapping to a vertical drive. Then every time his left wing stalled on the upstroke, he'd roll violently left, stall his right wing recovering, and flick like fire into a wild tumbling spin to the right. He couldn't be careful enough on that upstroke. 10 times he tried, and all 10 times, as he passed through 70 miles per hour, he burst into a churning mass of feathers, out of control, crashing down into the water. The key, he thought at last, dripping wet, must be to hold the wings still at high speeds, to flap up to 50, and then hold the wings still. From 2,000 feet, he tried again, rolling into his dive, beak straight down, wings full out and stable. From the moment he passed 50 miles per hour, it took tremendous strength, but it worked. In 10 seconds, he had blurred through 90 miles per hour. Jonathan had set a world speed record for seagulls. But victory was short-lived. The instant he began his pullout, the instant he changed the angle of his wings, he snapped into that same terrible, uncontrolled disaster at 90 miles per hour. It hit him like dynamite. Jonathan Seagull exploded in midair and smashed down into a brick-hard sea. When he came to, it was well after dark, and he floated in moonlight on the surface of the ocean. His wings were ragged bars of lead, but the weight of failure was even heavier on his back. He wished feebly that the weight could be just enough to drag him gently down to the bottom and end it all. As he sank low in the water, a strange, hollow voice sounded within him. There's no way around it. I am a seagull. I am limited by my nature. If I were meant to learn so much about flying, I'd have charts for brains. If I were meant to fly at speed, I'd have a falcon's short wings and live on mice instead of fish. My father was right. I must forget this foolishness. I must fly home to the flock and be content as I am, a poor, limited seagull. The voice faded, and Jonathan agreed. The place for a seagull at night is on the shore, and from this moment forth, he vowed, he would be a normal seagull. It would make everyone happier. He pushed wearily from the dark water and flew towards the land, grateful for what he had learned about work saving, low altitude flying. But no, he thought, I am done with the way I was. I am done with everything. I learned I am a seagull, like every other seagull, and I will fly like one. So he climbed painfully to 100 feet and flapped his wings harder, pressing for shore. He felt better for his decision to be just one of the flock. There would be no ties now to the force that had driven him to learn. There would be no more challenge and no more failure. And it was pretty just to stop thinking and fly through the dark toward the lights above the beach. Dark, the hollow voice cracked in alarm. Seagulls never fly in the dark. Jonathan was not alert to listen. It's pretty, he thought. The moon and the lights twinkling on the water, throwing out little beacon trails through the night, and all so peaceful and still. Get down! Seagulls never fly in the dark. If you were meant to fly in the dark, you'd have the eyes of an owl. You'd have charts for brains. You'd have a falcon's short wings. There in the night, 100 feet in the air, Jonathan Livingston Seagull blinked. His pain, his resolutions vanished. Short wings. A falcon's short wings. That's the answer. What a fool I've been. All I need is a tiny little wing. All I need is to fold most of my wings and fly on just the tips alone. Short wings. He climbed 2,000 feet above the Black Sea, and without a moment for thought of failure and death, he brought his forewings tightly into his body, left only the narrow, swept daggers of, wait a minute, I can't see, of his wingtips extended into the air, into the wind, and fell into a vertical dive. The wind was at a monster roar at his head, 70 miles per hour, 90, 120, and faster still. The wing strain now at 140 miles per hour wasn't nearly as hard as it had been before at 70, and with the faintest twist of his wingtips, he eased out of the dive and shot above the waves, a gray cannonball under the moon. He closed his eyes to slits against the wind and rejoiced. 140 miles per hour and under control. If I dive from 5,000 feet instead of 2,000, I wonder how fast. His vows of a moment before were forgotten, swept away in that great swift wind. Yet he felt guiltless, breaking the promises he had made himself. Such promises are only for the seagulls that accept the ordinary. One who has touched excellence in his learning has no need of that kind of promise. This book, like I said, made me realize that my friend Mountain was my Jonathan Livingston Seagull. I'm a better person for having known him. One who has touched excellence in his learning has no need of that kind of promise. By sunup, Jonathan Seagull was practicing again. From 5,000 feet, the fishing boats were specks in the flat blue water. Breakfast flock was a faint cloud of dust motes circling. He was alive, trembling ever so slightly with delight, proud that his fear was under control. Then, without ceremony, He hugged in his forewings, extended his short-angled wingtips, and plunged directly towards the sea. By the time he passed 4,000 feet, he had reached terminal velocity. The wind was a solid beating wall of sound against which he could move no faster. He was flying now straight down at 214 miles per hour. He swallowed, knowing that if his wings unfolded at that speed, he'd be blown into a million tiny shreds of Seagull. But the speed was power, and the speed was joy, and the speed was pure beauty. He began his pullout at 1,000 feet, wingtips thudding and blurring in that gigantic wind, the boats and the crowds of gulls tilting and growing meteor fast directly in his path. He couldn't stop. He didn't know yet even how to turn at that speed. Collision would be instant death. So he shut his eyes. It happened that morning. Then, just after sunrise, that Jonathan Livingston Seagull fired directly through the center of the breakfast flock, ticking off 212 miles per hour, eyes closed in a great roaring shriek of wind and feathers. The gull of fortune smiled upon him this once, and no one was killed. By the time he had pulled his beak straight up into the sky, and he was still scorching along at 160 miles per hour, when he had slowed to 20 and stretched his wings again at last, the boat was a crumb on the sea, 4,000 feet below. His thought was triumph, terminal velocity, a seagull at 214 miles per hour. It was a breakthrough, the greatest single moment in the history of the flock. And in that moment, a new age opened for Jonathan Seagull, flying out to his lonely practice area, folding his wings in for a dive from 8,000 feet. He set himself at once to discover how to turn. A single wingtip feather he found moved a fraction of an inch, gives a smooth sweeping curve at tremendous speed. Before he learned this, however, he found that moving more than one feather at that speed will spin you like a ball, and Jonathan had flown the first aerobatics of any seagull on earth. He spared no time that day for talk with other seagulls, but flew on past sunset. He discovered the loop, the slow roll, the point roll, the inverted spin, the gull bunt, the pinwheel. When Jonathan Seagull joined the other flock on the beach, it was full night. He was dizzy and terribly tired, yet in delight. He flew a loop to landing with a snap roll just before touchdown. When they hear of it, he thought of the breakthrough, they'll be wild with joy. How much more there is now to living. Instead of our drab slogging back and forth to the fishing boats, there's a reason to life. We can lift ourselves out of our ignorance. We can find ourselves creatures of excellence and intelligence and skill. We can be free. We can learn to fly. The years ahead hummed and glowed with promise. The seagulls were flocked into the council gathering when he landed, and apparently had been so flocked for some time. They were, in fact, waiting. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, stand to center. The elder's words sounded in a voice of highest ceremony. Stand to center meant only great shame or great honor. Stand to center for honor was the way the Seagull's foremost leaders were marked. Of course, he thought, the breakfast flock this morning, they saw the breakthrough. But I want no honors. I have no wish to be leader. I only want to share what I've found, to show those horizons out ahead for all of us. He stepped forward. Jonathan Livingston Seagull, said the elder, stand to center for shame in the sight of your fellow seagulls. It felt like being hit with a board. His knees went weak. His feathers sagged. There was a roaring in his ears. Centered for shame? Impossible. The breakthrough. They can't understand. They're wrong. They're wrong. For his reckless irresponsibility, the solemn voice went on, violating the dignity and tradition of the Seagull family. To be censured for shame meant that he would be cast out of the Gull Society, banished to a solitary life on the far cliffs. One day, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, you shall learn that irresponsibility does not pay. Life is the unknown and the unknowable, except that we are put into this earth to eat and stay alive as long as we possibly can. A seagull never speaks back to the council flock, but it was Jonathan's voice raised. Irresponsibility? My brothers, he cried. Who is more responsible than a seagull who finds and follows a meaning, a higher purpose for life? For 1,000 years we have scrabbled after fish heads, but now we have a reason to live, to learn, to discover, to be free. Give me one chance. Let me show you what I found. The flock might as well have been stone. The brotherhood is broken, the seagulls said together. And with one accord, they solemnly closed their ears and turned their backs upon him. People never look kindly upon people who want to do differently than everybody else. This isn't in the book, I'm just talking. Some people who are the best people find themselves alone and lonely because they want to know things. They want to be better. They want to be better. You guys like this story? Let me know by putting something in the chat. Anyone? And the story means a lot to me because I bet we all have our own Jonathan Livingston Seagull we've known in our life, and we'll probably be somebody's Jonathan Livingston Seagull in life. Jonathan Livingston Seagull spent the rest of his days alone, but he flew way out beyond the far cliffs. His one sorrow was not solitude. It was that the other gulls refused to believe the glory of flight that awaited them. They refused to open their eyes and see. He learned more each day. He learned that a streamlined high-speed dive could bring him to find the rare and tasty fish that schooled 10 feet below the surface of the ocean. He no longer needed fishing boats and stale bread for survival. He learned to sleep in the air, setting a course at night across the offshore wind, covering 100 miles from sunset to sunrise. With the same inner control, he flew through heavy sea fogs and climbed above them into dazzling clear skies. In the very times when every other gull stood on the ground, knowing nothing but mist and rain, he learned to ride the high winds far inland, to dine there on delicate insects. What he had once hoped for the flock, he now gained for himself alone. He learned to fly and was not sorry for the price that he had paid. Jonathan Seagull discovered that boredom and fear and anger are the reasons that a seagull's life is so short. and with these gone from his thought, he lived a long, fine life indeed. Thank you, Bobby. They came in the evening and found Jonathan gliding peaceful and alone through his beloved sky. The two gulls that appeared at his wings were pure as starlight, and the glow from them was gentle and friendly in the high night air. But most lovely of all was the skill with which they flew, their wingtips moving a precise and constant inch from his own. Without a word, Jonathan put them to the test, a test that no gull has ever passed. He twisted his wings, slowed to a single mile per hour above the stall. The two radiant birds slowed with him, smoothly, locked in position. They knew about slow flying. Thank you, Mary. He folded his wings, rolled, and dropped in a dive to 190 miles per hour. They dropped with him, streaking down in flawless formation. At last he turned that speed straight up into a long vertical slow roll. They rolled with him, smiling. He recovered to a level flight and was quiet for a time before he spoke. Very well, he said. Who are you? We're from your flock, Jonathan. We are your brothers. The words were strong and calm. We've come to take you higher, to take you home. Home, I have none. Flock, I have none. I am an outcast, and we fly now at the peak of the great mountain wind, beyond a few 100 feet. I can lift this old body no higher. But you can, Jonathan, for you have learned. One school is finished, and the time has come for another to begin. As it had shined across him all his life, so understanding lighted that moment for Jonathan Seagull. They were right. He could fly higher, and it was time to go home. He gave one last look across the sky, across that magnificent silver land where he had learned so much. I'm ready, he said at last. And Jonathan Livingston Seagull rose with the two star-bright gulls to disappear into a beautiful, perfect dark sky. It's not over yet. Do you guys get the symbolic meaning of it, though? That I just think it's so beautiful. I myself, anyway. Part 2. So this is heaven, he thought, and he had to smile at himself. You're welcome. It was hardly respectful to analyze heaven in the very moment that one flies up to enter it. As he came from earth now, above the clouds and in close formation with the two brilliant seagulls, he saw that his own body was growing as bright as theirs. True, the same young Jonathan Seagull was there, that had always lived behind his golden eyes, but the outer form had changed. It felt like a seagull body, but already it flew better, far better than his old one had ever flown. Why, with half the effort, he thought, I'll get twice the speed, twice the performance of my best days on earth. His feathers glowed a brilliant white now, and his wings were smooth and perfect as sheets of polished silver. He began delightedly to learn about them, to press power into these wings. At 250 miles per hour, he felt that he was nearing his level flight maximum speed. At 273, he thought he was flying as fast as he could fly. He was ever so faintly disappointed. There was a limit to how much the new body could do, and though it was much faster than his old level flight record, it was still a limit that would take great efforts to crack. In heaven, he thought, there should be no limits. The clouds broke apart. His escorts called, "Happy landings, Jonathan," and vanished into thin air. He was flying over a sea towards a jagged shoreline. A very few seagulls were working the updrafts on the cliffs. Away off to the north, on the horizon itself, flew a few others. New sights, new thoughts, new questions. Why so few gulls? Heaven should be flocked with seagulls. And why am I so tired all at once? Seagulls in heaven are never supposed to be tired or to sleep. Where had he heard that? The memory of his life on earth was falling away. Earth had been a place where he had learned so much, of course, but the details were blurred. Something about fighting for food and being outcast. The dozen seagulls by the shoreline came to meet him, none saying a word. He felt only that he was welcome and that this was home. It had been a big day for him, a day whose sunrise he no longer remembered. He turned to land on the beach, beating his wings to stop an inch in the air, then dropping lightly to the sand. The other gulls landed too, but not one of them so much as flapped a feather. They swung into the wind, bright wings outstretched. Then somehow they changed the curve of their feathers until they had stopped. In the same instant their feet touched the ground. It was beautiful control, but now Jonathan was just too tired to try it. Standing there on the beach, still without a word spoken, he was asleep. In the days that followed, Jonathan saw that there was as much to learn about flight in this place as there had been in the life behind him, but with a difference. Here, the seagulls who thought as he thought Here there were seagulls who thought as he thought. For each of them, the most important thing to do in living was to reach out and touch perfection in that which they loved most to do. And that was to fly. They were magnificent birds, all of them, and they spent hour after hour every day practicing flight, testing advanced aeronautics. For a long time, Jonathan forgot about the world that he had come from, that place where the flock lived with its eyes tightly shut to the joy of flight, using its wings as means to the end of finding and fighting for food. But now and then, just for a moment, he remembered. He remembered it one morning when he was out with his instructor while they rested on the beach after a session of folded wing snap rolls. "Where is everybody, Sullivan?" he asked silently, quite at home now with the easy telepathy that these seagulls use instead of screeches and crocks, or whatever you call it. "Why aren't there more of us here? Why? Where I came from, there were thousands and thousands of seagulls." "I know," Sullivan shook his head. "The only answer I can see, Jonathan, is that you are pretty well one in a million bird. Most of us come along ever so slowly. We went from one world into another that was almost exactly like it, forgetting right away where we had come from, not caring where we were headed, living for the moment. Do you have any idea how many lives we must have gone through before we even got the first idea that there is more to life than eating or fighting or the power in the flock? 1,000 lives, John. 10,000. And then another 100 lives before we begin to learn that there is such a thing as perfection. And another 100 again to get the idea that our purpose for living is to find that perfection and show it forth. The same rule holds for us now. Of course, we choose our next world through what we learn in this one. Learn nothing, and the next world is the same as this one, all the same. All the same limitations and lead weights to overcome. He stretched his wings and turned to face the wind. But you, John, he said, learned so much at one time that you didn't have to go through 1,000 lives to reach this one. In a moment, they were airborne again, practicing. The formation point rolls were difficult, for through the inverted half, Jonathan had to think upside down, reversing the curve of his wing, and reversing it exactly in harmony with his instructor. Let's try it again, Sullivan said over and over. Let's try it again. And then finally, good, and they began practicing outside loops. One evening, the seagulls that were not night flying stood together on the sand, thinking. Jonathan took all his courage in hand and walked to the elder seagull, who, it was said, was soon to be moving beyond this world. Chang, he said nervously. The old seagull looked at him kindly. Yes, my son. Instead of being enfeebled by age, the elder had been empowered by it. He could outfly any gull in the flock, and he had learned skills that the others were only gradually coming to know. Chang, this world isn't heaven at all, is it? The elder smiled in the moonlight. You are learning again, Jonathan Seagull, he said. Well, what happens from here? Where are we going? Is there no such place as heaven? No, Jonathan. There is no such place. Heaven is not a place, and it is not a time. Heaven is being perfect. He was silent for a moment. You are a very fast flyer, aren't you? I enjoy speed, Jonathan said, taken aback, but proud that the elder had noticed. You will begin to touch heaven, Jonathan, in the moment that you touch perfect speed. And that isn't flying 1,000 miles an hour or 1,000,000, or flying at the speed of light, because any number is a limit, and perfection doesn't have limits. Perfect speed, my son, is being there. Without warning, Chang vanished and appeared at the water's edge 50 feet away, all in the flicker of an instant. Then he vanished again and stood in the same millisecond at Jonathan's shoulder. It's kind of fun, he said. Jonathan was dazzled. He forgot to ask about heaven. How do you do that? What does it feel like? How far can you go? You can go to any place and to any time that you wish to, the elder said. I've gone everywhere and everywhere I can think of. He looked across the sea. It's strange. The seagulls who scorn perfection for the sake of travel go nowhere, slowly. Those who put aside travel for the sake of perfection go anywhere. Instantly. Remember, Jonathan, heaven isn't a place or a time, because place and time are so very meaningless. Heaven is. Can you teach me to fly like that? Jonathan Seagull trembled to conquer another unknown. Of course, if you wish to learn. I wish. When can we start? We could start now if you'd like. I want to learn to fly like that, Jonathan said. And a strange light glowed in his eyes. Tell me what to do. Chang spoke slowly and watched the younger gull ever so carefully. To fly as fast as thought to anywhere that is, she said, you must begin by knowing that you have already arrived. The trick, according to Chang, was for Jonathan to stop seeing himself as trapped inside a limited body that had a 42-inch wingspan and performance that could be plotted on a chart. The trick was to know that his true nature lived as perfect as an unwritten number everywhere at once across space and time. Jonathan kept at it fiercely, day after day, from before sunrise till past midnight, and for all his effort, he moved not a feather width from his spot. Forget about faith, Chang said it time and time again. You didn't need faith to fly. You needed to understand flying. This is just the same. Now try again. Then one day, Jonathan, standing on the shore, closing his eyes, concentrated, all in a flash knew what Chang had been telling him. Why, that's true. I am a perfect, unlimited seagull. He felt a great shock of joy. Good, said Chang, and there was victory in his voice. Jonathan opened his eyes. He stood alone with the elder on a totally different seashore, trees down to the water's edge, twin yellow suns turning overhead. At last you got the idea, Chang said, but your control needs a little work. Jonathan was stunned. Where are we? Chang, unimpressed with the strange surroundings, the elder brushed the question aside. We're on some planet, obviously, with a green sky and a double star for a sun. Jonathan made a screech of delight, the first sound he had made since he had left Earth. It works. Well, of course it works, John, said Chang. It always works. When you know what you're doing, know about your control. By the time they returned, it was dark. The other seagulls looked at Jonathan with awe in their golden eyes, for they had seen him disappear from where he had been rooted for so long. He stood there, congratulations, for less than a minute. I'm the newcomer here. I'm just beginning. It is I who must learn from you. I wonder about that, John, said Sullivan, standing near. You have less fear of learning than any seagull I've seen in 10,000 years. The flock fell silent, and Jonathan fidgeted in embarrassment. We can start working with time if you wish, Chang said, till you can fly in the past and the future, and then you will be ready to begin the most difficult, the most powerful, the most fun of all. You will be ready to begin to fly up and know the meaning of kindness and of love. I don't know if I should finish this book. Should I finish it? Are you guys into it or no? If not, I can just finish it another time. In fact, I think I will just finish it another time. My phone's starting to die. Hopefully I can find it again. Hopefully. You do? Okay, well then. Okay. A month went by, or something that felt like about a month, and Jonathan learned at a tremendous rate. He had always had learned quickly from ordinary experience, and now, the special student of the elder himself, he took in new ideas like a streamlined feathered computer. But then the day came that Chang vanished. He had been talking quietly with them all, exhorting them never to stop their learning and their practicing, and their striving to understand more of the perfect invisible principle to life. Then, as he spoke, his feathers went brighter and brighter, and at last turned so brilliant that no seagull could look upon him. It is a nice meaning, isn't it, Mary? "Jonathan," he said, and these were the last words that he spoke, "keep working on love." When they could see again, Chang was gone. As the days went past, Jonathan found himself thinking time and again of the earth from which he had come. If he had known there just a tenth, just a hundredth of what he knew here, how much more life would have meant. He stood on the sand and fell to the wondering if there was a seagull back there that might be struggling to break out of their limits, to see the meaning of flight beyond a way of travel, to get breadcrumbs from a rowboat. Perhaps there might even have been one made outcast for speaking his truth in the face of the flock. And the more Jonathan practiced his kindness lessons, and the more he worked to know the nature of love, the more he wanted to go back to earth. For in spite of his lonely past, Jonathan Seagull was born to be an instructor, and his own way of demonstrating love was to give something of the truth that he had seen to a gull who had asked only a chance to see truth for himself. I'm convinced that my friend Mountain was my Jonathan Livingston Seagull. Sullivan, adept now at the thought speed flight and helping the others to learn, was doubtful. "John, you were outcast once. Why do you think that any of the seagulls in your old time would listen to you now? You know the proverb, and it's true. The gull sees farthest who flies highest. Those seagulls where you came from are standing on the ground, squawking and fighting among themselves. They're 1,000 miles from heaven, and you say you want to show them heaven from where they stand? John, they can't see their own wingtips. Stay here. Help the new seagulls here, the ones who are high enough to see what you have to tell them." He was quiet for a moment, and then he said, "What if Chang had gone back to his old worlds? Where would you have been today?" The last point was the telling one, and Sullivan was right. The gull sees farthest who flies highest. Jonathan stayed and worked with the new birds coming in, who were all very bright and quick with their lessons, but the old feeling came back, and he couldn't help but think that there might be one or two gulls back on Earth who would be able to learn. How much more would he have known by now if Chang had come to him on the day that he was outcast? "Sully, I must go back," he said at last. "Your students are doing well. They can help you bring the newcomers along." Sullivan sighed, but he did not argue. "I think I'll miss you, Jonathan," was all he said. "Sully, for shame," Jonathan said in reproach, "and don't be foolish. What are we trying to practice every day? If our friendship depends on things like space and time, then when we finally overcome space and time, we've destroyed our own brotherhood. But overcome space, and all we have left is here. Overcome time, and all we have left is now. And in the middle of here and now, don't you think that we might see each other once or twice?" Sullivan Seagull laughed in spite of himself. "You crazy bird," he said kindly. "If anybody can show someone on the ground how to see 1,000 miles, it will be Jonathan Livingston Seagull." He looked at the sand. "Goodbye, John, my friend." "Goodbye, Sully. We'll meet again." And with that, Jonathan held in thought an image of the great seagull flocks on the shore of another time, and he knew with practiced ease that he was not bone and feather, but a perfect idea of freedom and flight, limited by nothing at all. Fletcher Lynn Seagull was still quite young, but already he knew that no bird had ever been so harshly treated by any flock or with so much injustice. "I don't care what they say," he thought fiercely, and his vision blurred as he flew out towards the far cliffs. There's so much more to flying than just flapping around from place to place. A, mos- a, a mosquito does that. One little barrel roll around the elder gull just for fun and I'm an outcast? Are they blind? Can't they see? Can't they think of the glory that it'll be when we really learn to fly? I don't care what they think. I'll show them what flying is. I'll be pure outlaw. If that's the way they want it, and I'll make them so sorry. The voice came inside his own head, and though it was very gentle, it startled him so much that he faltered and stumbled in the air. Don't be harsh on them, Fletcher Seagull. In casting you out, the other gulls have only hurt themselves. And one day they will know this, and one day they will see what you see. Forgive them and help them to understand. An inch from his right wingtip flew the most brilliant white gull in all the world, gliding effortlessly along, not moving a feather, at what was very nearly Fletcher's top speed. There was a moment of chaos in the young bird. What's going on? Am I mad? Am I dead? What is this? Low and calm, the voice went on within his thought, demanding an answer. Fletcher Lind Seagull, do you want to fly? Yes, I want to fly. Fletcher Lind Seagull, do you want to fly so much that you will forgive the flock and learn, and go back to them one day and work to help them know? There was no lying to this magnificent, skillful being, no matter how proud or how hurt a bird was. Fletcher Seagull, I do, he said softly. Then Fletch, that bright creature said to him, and the voice was very kind, let's begin with level flight. Part 3. It's only a few pages left. Jonathan circled over the far cliffs. Watching this young, rough Fletcher gull was very nearly a perfect flight student. He was strong and light and quick in the air, but far and away more important, he had a blazing drive to learn to fly. Here he came to this minute, a blurred gray shape roaring out of a dive, flashing 150 miles per hour past his instructor. He pulled abruptly into another try at 16-point vertical slow roll, calling the points out loud. 8, 9, 10. See, Jonathan? I'm running off airspeed. 11. I want good sharp stops like yours. 12. Blast, I just can't make it. 13. These last 3 points without... Ah! Fletcher's whip style at the top was all for the worse for his rage and fury at failing. He fell backwards, tumbled, slammed savagely into an inverted spin, and recovered at last, panting 100 feet below his instructor's level. You're wasting your time with me, Jonathan. I'm too dumb. I'm too stupid. I try, but I'll never get it. Jonathan Seagull looked down at him and nodded. You'll never get it for sure as long as you keep making that pull-up so hard. Fletcher, you lost 40 miles an hour in the entry. You have to be smooth, firm, but smooth, remember. He dropped down to the level of the younger gull. Let's try it together now in formation. And pay attention to that pull-up. It's a smooth, easy entry. By the end of 3 months, Jonathan had 6 other students, outcasts all, yet curious about this strange new idea of flight for the joy of flying. Still, it was easier for them to practice high performance than it was for them to understand the reason behind it. Each of us is in truth an idea of the great seagull, an unlimited idea of freedom, Jonathan would say in evenings on the beach. And precise flying is a step towards expressing our real nature. Everything that limits us, we have to put aside. That is why all this high-speed practice and low-speed and whatever. And his students would be asleep, exhausted from the day's flying. They liked the practice because it was fast and exciting, and it fed a hunger for learning that grew within each and every lesson. But not one of them, not even Fletcher Lind Gull, had come to believe that the flight of ideas could possibly be as real as the flight of wind and feather. Your whole body, from wingtip to wingtip, Jonathan would say other times, is nothing more than your thought itself in a form you can see. Break the chains of your thought, and you can break the chains of your body too. But no matter how he said it, it sounded like pleasant fiction, and they needed more sleep. It was only a month later that Jonathan said the time had come to return to the flock. "We're not ready," said Henry Calvin Gull. "We're not welcome. We're outcasts. We can't force ourselves to go where we're not welcome, can we?" "We're free to go where we wish, and to be what we are," Jonathan answered, and he lifted from the sand and turned east toward the home grounds of the flock. There was brief anguish among his students, for it is the law of the flock that an outcast never returns, and the law had not been broken once in 10,000 years. The law said stay. Jonathan said go, and by now he was a mile across the water. If they waited much longer, he would reach a hostile flock alone. "Well, we don't have to obey the law if we're not part of the flock, do we?" Fletcher said, rather self-consciously. "Besides, if there's a fight, we'll be a lot more help there than here." And so they flew in from the west that morning, 8 of them, in a double diamond formation, wingtips almost overlapping. They came across the flock's council beach at 135 miles per hour, Jonathan in the lead, Fletcher smoothly at his right wing, Henry Calvin struggled gamely at his left. Then the whole formation rolled slowly to the right as one bird leveled to inverted to level. The wind whipped over them all. The squawks and scratches of everyday life in the flock were cut off as though the formation were a giant knife, and 8,000 seagull eyes watched without a single blink. One by one, each of the 8 birds pulled sharply upward into a full loop and flew all the way around to a dead slow stand-up, landing in the sand. Then, as though this sort of thing happened every day, Jonathan Seagull began his critique of the flight. "To begin with," he said with a smile, "you were all a little bit late on the join-up. It went like lightning through the flock. Those birds are outcasts, and they have returned. And that can't happen." Fletcher's predictions of battle melted in the flock's confusion. "Well, sure, okay, they're outcasts," said some of the younger gulls. "But hey, man, where did they learn to fly like that?" It took almost an hour for the word of the elder to pass through the flock. "Ignore them. The gull who speaks to an outcast is himself an outcast. The gull who looks upon an outcast breaks the law of the flock." Gray feathered backs were turned upon Jonathan from that moment onward, but he didn't appear to notice. He held his practice sessions directly over the council beach, and for the first time began pressing his students to the limit of their ability. "Martin Gull," he shouted across the sky. "You say you know low-speed flying? You know nothing till you prove it. Fly." So quiet little Martin William Seagull, startled to be caught under his instructor's fire, surprised himself, and became a wizard of low speeds. In the lightest breeze, he could curve his feathers to lift himself without a single flap of wing from sand to cloud and down again. Likewise, Charles Roland Seagull flew the great mountain wind to 24,000 feet, came down, blew from the cold, thin air, amazed and happy, determined to go still higher tomorrow. Fletcher Seagull, who loved aerobatics like no one else, conquered his 16-point vertical slow roll, and the next day topped it off with a triple cartwheel, his feathers flashing white sunlight to a beach from which more than one furtive eye watched. Every hour, Jonathan was there at the side of each of his students, demonstrating, suggesting, pressuring, guiding. He flew with them through night and cloud and storm for the sport of it, while the flock huddled miserably on the ground. When the flying was done, the students relaxed in the sand, and in time they listened more closely to Jonathan. He had some crazy ideas that they couldn't understand, but then he had some good ones that they could. Gradually in the night, another circle formed around the circle of students, a circle of curious seagulls, listening in the darkness for hours on end, not wishing to be seen or to be heard of one another, fading away before daybreak. It was a month after the return that the first gull of the flock crossed the line and asked to learn how to fly. In his asking, Terence Lowell Gull became a condemned bird, labeled outcast, and the eighth of Jonathan's students. The next night from the flock came Kirk Maynard Seagull, wobbling across the stand, dragging his left wing to collapse at Jonathan's feet. "Help me," he said very quietly, speaking in the way that the dying speak. "I want to fly, more than anything else in the world." "Come along then," said Jonathan. "Climb with me away from the ground, and we'll begin." "You don't understand. My wing. I can't move my wing." "Maynard Gull, you have the freedom to be yourself, your true self, here and now, and nothing can stand in your way. It is the law of the great gull, the law that is." "Are you saying I can fly?" "I say you are free." As simply and as quickly as that, Kirk Maynard Gull spread his wings effortlessly and lifted into the dark night air. The flock was roused from sleep by his cry, as loud as he could scream it from 500 feet up. "I can fly! Listen, I can fly!" By sunrise, there were nearly 1,000 seagulls standing outside the circle of students, looking curiously at Maynard. They didn't care whether they were seen or not, and they listened, trying to understand Jonathan Seagull. He spoke of very simple things, that it is right for a seagull to fly, that freedom is the very nature of his being, that whatever stands against freedom must be set aside, be it ritual or superstition or limitation in any form. "Set aside?" came a voice from the multitude. "Even if it be the law of the flock?" "The only true law is that which leads to freedom," Jonathan said. "There is no other." "How do you expect us to fly as you fly?" came another voice. "You are special and gifted and divine, above other birds. Look at Fletcher, Lowell, Charles Roland, Judy Lee. Are they also special and gifted and divine? No more than you are, no more than I am. The only difference, the very only one, is that they have begun to understand what they really are and have begun to practice it." His students, save Fletcher, shifted uneasily. They hadn't realized that this was what they were doing. The crowd grew larger every day, coming to question, to idolize, to scorn. "They are saying in the flock that if you are not the son of the great gull himself," Fletcher told Jonathan one morning after the advanced speed practice, "then you are 1,000 years ahead of your time." Jonathan sighed. The price of being misunderstood, he thought. They call you a devil or they call you a god. What do you think, Fletch? Are we ahead of our time? A long silence. Well, this kind of flying has always been here to be learned by anybody who wanted to discover it. That's got nothing to do with time. We're ahead of the fashion, maybe, ahead of the way that most seagulls fly. That's something, Jonathan said, rolling to glide, inverted for a while. That's not half as bad as being ahead of our time. It happened. Just a week later, Fletcher was demonstrating the elements of high-speed flying to a class of new students. He had just pulled out of his dive from 7,000 feet to a long gray streak firing a few inches above the beach when a young bird on its first flight glided directly into his path, calling for its mother. With a tenth of a second to avoid the youngster, Fletcher Lynn Seagull stepped hard to the left at something over 200 miles per hour into a cliff of solid granite. It was, for him, as though the rock were a giant hard door into another world. A burst of fear and shock, black as he hit, and then he was adrift in a strange sky, forgetting, remembering, forgetting, and sad, and sorry, terribly sorry. The voice came to him as it had in the first day that he had met Jonathan Livingston Seagull. The trick, Fletcher, is that we are trying to overcome our limitations in order, patiently. We don't tackle flying through rock until a little later in the program. Jonathan, also known as the son of the great gull, his instructor said dryly. What are you doing here? The cliff. Didn't I die? Oh, Fletch, come on. Think. If you are talking to me now, then obviously you didn't die, did you? What you did manage to do was to change your level of consciousness rather abruptly. It's your choice now. You can stay here and learn on this level, which is quite a bit higher than the one you left, by the way. Or you can go back and keep working with the flock. The elders were hoping for some kind of disaster, but they're startled that you obliged them so well. I want to go back to the flock, of course. I've barely begun with the new group. Very well, Fletcher. Remember what we were saying about one's body being nothing more than thought itself. Fletcher shook his head and stretched his wings, opened his eyes at the base of the cliff. In the center of the whole flock assembled, there was a great clamor of squawks and screeches from the crowd when first he moved. He lives! He that was dead lives! Touched him with a wingtip, brought him to life, the son of the great gull. No, he denies it. He's a devil, come to break the flock. There were 4,000 seagulls in the crowd, frightened at what had happened, and the cry devil went through them like the wind of an ocean storm. Eyes glazed, beaks sharp, they closed in to destroy. Would you feel better if we left, Fletcher? Asked Jonathan. I certainly wouldn't object too much if we did. Instantly they stood together a half-mile away, and the flashing beaks of the mobs closed on empty air. Why is it, Jonathan puzzled, that the hardest thing in the world is to convince a bird that he is free, and that he can prove it for himself if he just spend a little time practicing? Why should that be so hard? Fletcher blinked from the change of scene. What did you just do? How did we get here? You did say you wanted to be out of the mob, didn't you? Yes, but how did you? Like everything else, Fletcher, practice. By morning, the flock had forgotten its insanity, but Fletcher had not. Jonathan, remember what you said a long time ago about loving the flock enough to return to it and help it to learn? Sure. I don't understand how you managed to love a mob of birds that has just tried to kill you. Oh, Fetch, you don't love that. You don't love hatred and evil, of course. You have to practice and see the real seagull, the good in every one of them, and to help them see it in themselves. That's what I mean by love. It's fun when you get the knack of it. I remember a fierce young bird, for instance, Fletcher Lynn Seagull, his name, just been made outcast, ready to fight the flock to death, getting a start on building his own bitter hell out on the far cliffs. And here he is today, building his own heaven instead and leading the whole flock in that direction. Fletcher turned to his instructor, and there was a moment of fright in his eye. Me? Leading? What do you mean? Me? Leading? You're the instructor here. You couldn't leave. Couldn't I? Don't you think that there might be other flocks, other Fletchers that need an instructor more than this one, that's on its way towards the light? Me? John? I'm just a plain seagull, and you're the only son of the great gull, I suppose. Jonathan sighed and looked out to sea. You don't need me any longer. You need to keep finding yourself a little more each day. That real, unlimited Fletcher Seagull. He's your instructor. You need to understand him and to practice him. A moment later, Jonathan's body wavered in the air, shimmering, and began to go transparent. Don't let them spread silly rumors about me or make me a god, okay, Fletch? I'm a seagull. I like to fly. Maybe. Jonathan! Poor Fletch. Don't believe what your eyes are telling you. All they show is limitation. With your understanding, find out what you already know, and you'll see the way to fly. To begin with, he said heavily. Oh, sorry. The shimmering stopped. Jonathan Seagull had vanished into empty air. After a time, Fletcher Gull dragged himself into the sky and faced a brand new group of students eager for their first lesson. To begin with, he said heavily, you've got to understand that a seagull is an unlimited idea of freedom and an image of the great gull. And your whole body, from wingtip to wingtip, is nothing more than your thought itself. The young gulls looked at him quizzically. Hey, man, they thought, this doesn't sound like a rule for a loop. Fletcher sighed and started over. Very well, he said, and eyed them critically. Let's begin with level flight. And saying that, he understood all at once that his friend had quite honestly been no more divine than Fletcher himself. No limits, Jonathan, he thought. Well, then the time's not distant when I'm going to appear out of thin air on your beach, and I'm going to show you a thing or two about flying. And though he tried to look properly severe for his students, Fletcher Seagull saw them all as they really were, just for a moment, and he more than liked. He loved what he saw. No limits, Jonathan, he thought, and he smiled. His race to learn had began. Anyway, my phone's dying. So, peace, love, and tacos, you guys.